Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, Maker, Dai, Monero. There are so many different cryptocurrencies out there, but how in the world are we supposed to track all of these and the prices of each one? Well, if you stay tuned, I will show you how you can make your own command line tool that will track all of these prices for you. Let's get started. All right, so if we jump over to Visual Studio Code, I just want to show you what this is going to look like before we jump into the project. All right, so if we run node and then the name of the JS file that we're going to create, it will run. And what it does is it uses a WebSocket to listen for any changes in the price. And so it updates immediately as soon as there's a price change. So that's why it keeps refreshing so quickly. Right now I have it just monitoring Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. But when we make this, there'll be 41 different cryptocurrencies. As long as it's in Coinbase, we can track it on using this application. So let's actually get started with this in our own project. So there is a couple dependencies that we're going to have before we get started with this project. The first, you need a Coinbase account in order to get the API key and the secret that you need to be able to put it in this project. The second thing you'll need is Node.js installed on your computer. So let me show you where to go for the Node install. So just Google Node install, and then it's this first link, whether you have Windows or Mac or a different operating system. So you can install it for Linux as well. I'm going to do Windows and then just run the installer, accept all the defaults that it gives you. And then once that finishes, we're going to go over here to the command prompt. And a way to make sure that it is actually working is to type in node -- version. And as long as it gives you a number and not an error message, then you're good to go and you have Node installed. And the same way, let's type in npm -- version. And that'll tell you if npm is working on your computer. So here we have both of those working. So we're ready to actually get started with the project. So there are 2 npm modules that we need to install for this project to function correctly. So let's make sure that we are in the folder that we actually want this project to be stored in, and then type in npm install Coinbase Pro. And it's very important that you type it the exact same way that I do. And then if you hit enter, it'll install that module and any of the dependencies that module has. Okay, so it just finished, and we're going to do the same thing, npm install, and we're going to install Chalk. All right. So there may be a couple warnings that you see up here. As long as everything installed correctly, then there's usually warnings when you're installing npm modules, and there's nothing to really worry about. As you see here, there's 0 vulnerabilities by using Chalk and the Coinbase Pro npm packages. All right, so this added a node modules folder up here and a package lock.json file. You don't want to mess with anything in either of those locations, as it could mess up the rest of the project. If you look at this, it's a bunch of different versions for all of the different dependencies that we just installed. And this locks it in a certain version so that if that software is updated, our app will still work because it's using the correct version that we know it works on. And in the node modules folder, this is where everything is installed. Here you can see Coinbase Pro and Chalk. So now let's create our first file. Let's name it crypto.js. You can really name this anything that you want to, but this is going to contain all of the logic behind this application. So the first thing that we want to do inside this file is declare our constants. So we'll do const, and then I'm going to abbreviate Coinbase Pro, and we're going to write a require statement, Coinbase Pro. And then let's do const fs equals require fs, and that'll allow us to read from a different file that we have saved. So we're going to have a JSON file that contains all of the cryptocurrencies, as well as another file that has our API keys that will read from this JavaScript file. Okay, we're going to require Chalk. This will let us style the text in the command line so that we can see if the price is up or down, depending on the average for the day. The last one is, I'm going to call it WebSocket, and this is going to equal what the actual Coinbase WebSocket is, which you can find if we go to the API documentation. And I can link this in the description below, but essentially we're going to go down to WebSocket feed here and copy this link. It starts with WSS and paste it in there. All right, so now what I want to do is use that fs and do a read file sync. And here I'm going to read from a file called api.json. And this file does not exist, so it might yell at us right now. So let's actually create this file, api.json. If you download the source code from GitHub that I link in the description, it'll have an empty api.json file that you can put your API keys in. So here we want to just make an empty object and then passphrase, and then we'll put what the passphrase is in that Coinbase Pro gives us. We'll do a key and we'll do a secret. And let's actually look how we can get those 3 pieces of information that we can paste in here. So if you have a Coinbase account already, just log in, and then up here where it says your name, you're going to click on that and then go to API. Up here, you're going to want to select new API key. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to have it with my default portfolio. So I'm going to name it YouTube test so that I know to delete it afterwards. I'm going to just select view so that even if somebody gets a hold of this key somehow, they can't actually make trades using this API key. So that's very important for the security of your application and the security of your Coinbase account so that people don't do malicious things with your code, especially if you accidentally publish it to GitHub with the API keys in it. So this is where the passphrase is going to come from. So we're going to copy that passphrase, paste it in here, and then hit create API key. It's going to ask you to authenticate. And then after that, it'll give you the key and the secret that you're going to paste in here as well. All right. I'm going to hit cancel because I already have an API key that I'm going to use instead. I'm not going to show you what I put in here though. All right. So I just finished putting all of my API keys in here. I'm going to make a second file and I'm going to call it crypto.json. And there are 41 different cryptocurrencies on Coinbase that you can use this API to track. So I'm not going to type them all in because as you see, it's about 250 lines of code in this JSON file. But if you download the files that I link to in the description, you can just copy everything over from this JSON file. Or you can just start by making an array with just Bitcoin and Ethereum if you just wanted to track these first couple. So that's all we need to do here. As you can see, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin are the 3 that are enabled. Everything else is false. So once we get to actually seeing the results of this project, if you want anything else to work, you would just change it to true and it'll show up in the command line. So let's go back to crypto.js. And now let's do const API equals, we're going to have to do a JSON parse and then pass in API JSON. So it'll convert it to a string that we can actually read and write to the command prompt here. We also need to loop through the crypto.json file and pull out any of the cryptocurrencies that we're going to show on the bottom here. All right, so let crypto.json equal fs read file sync. Same way, we're going to pass in, and then let crypto equal JSON parse .json. The last thing we want to declare before we get into it is a crypto array, and we're going to set that to an empty array here. So now we can do crypto.forEach, and then we're going to name this crypto. And then this is going to loop through every cryptocurrency in the crypto.json file. And what we're going to do is we're going to push each of those into this crypto array. Okay, and we're passing in the USD pair because if we look back at crypto.json, that's this like BCH-USD. And so this is what we're going to be able to compare with the ID of the cryptocurrency from the WebSocket. And if it equals, then we change the prices. Let's now do our API authentications. So let's do const API.passphrase. Const key equals API.key. Const secret equals API.secret. Okay, and what this is doing is it's just going to API, which we declared up here. That's pointing to the API.json file. This was each key value pair in the JSON file. So this is the way that we can have all of the logic in this one file without actually making our application less secure by putting our API keys in it. So we're referencing a different file that we can then keep only on our computer and not publish it publicly. Now what we can do is establish the WebSocket. And to do that, we're going to just name the variable WebSocket and set that equal to new Coinbase Pro .WebSocket client. And then this takes a couple different parameters that we need to pass in here. The first is what cryptocurrencies we're going to subscribe to in this. So we can do that by passing in crypto array. Then we need to give the WebSocket URI that we're going to be using. And if you look up here, that's just WebSocket. And then the next one is WebSocket authentication. So here we need to pass in an object that has the key, the secret, and the passphrase. Since we declared that right here, we can do key, that's equal to key, and then secret is equal to secret, and passphrase equal to passphrase. And a way that we can actually shorten this is if the key and the value, so passphrase is the key, passphrase is the value. If it's the same name for both, you can actually shorten it to just passphrase or just secret. So it's a way that we can keep our code more concise and make it a little bit more readable. And then the last thing that we need to do is pass in the different channels we want to subscribe to. The different channels include, there's a ticker channel. there's all sorts of different channels. Let's look. There's full, which will return every different change, which is a lot more information than we actually need for this project. Level 2 is also way too much information than we actually need. So what we really care about right now is channels, and then a channel called ticker. And then we have to pass in the object there. Let's hit save. Okay, so mine reformatted it, but we have our array, we have the WebSocket URI, we have our API information and the channel that we're subscribing to. After that, what we can do is we're going to use this syntax right here, this WebSocket on, message, error, and close. And so this is going to listen for a message. It'll listen for an error and do something with that. And then this will listen for the close message that is received, which would then close the WebSocket or end the WebSocket that we have open. So let's copy that and paste it in here, just to make it a little bit easier. And if you go to npmjs.com, then you can search for Coinbase Pro and get all of these, get all the documentation for how to use this, because it has the ability to actually trade and buy and sell different cryptocurrencies with this same type of code that we're writing. And so if you wanted to continue this project and make it to where you can have it automatically buy or sell cryptocurrency, then you are fully capable of doing that with this. But I recommend just doing this to get started and get a feel for how to use this API, how to use a WebSocket, and to get that actually working without any bugs or any errors. Let's start with these last two. So there's not really too much I'm going to do with errors or with the close message. I just want a console log error, and I'm pretty sure that this one just has to be there so that it can close if it actually receives the close message, because it's not passing anything into this function. So it's probably just going to return nothing. Okay, the last thing we want to do is if we receive a message, we're going to do something with the data as a result. So let's console log data and see what happens with this. So to get this to run, we're going to do node and then type in the name of the JS file that we have. Okay, so this is logging everything. And if you see here, this has type ticker. Okay, this has type ticker. This is heartbeat. This is heartbeat. And so it's giving us way more information than we actually need, because we can't do anything with this message that we received. So let's go back up here where we have console log. We don't need that. So let's do if data.type triple equals ticker. Now let's console log data, and let's make sure that we're only receiving the ticker messages. Ticker, 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 ticker. Okay, so this looks like we're only getting the ticker messages now, which is good. That's what we need. So let's get rid of that console log. Let's get rid of this one. We need to loop through every coin that we have that is enabled in our crypto.json file, and then get all of the information that we can from those specific coins. So let's do crypto for each. And let's say coin if data.product ID triple equals coin.usd pair. We are going to collect all of the information. And since we already have an array with all of the information for each of the cryptocurrency that we need, we're just going to add onto that and store the data inside that array. And then once we finish running this, once we close the application, it's going to clear that. So it's not going to store it. So let's do coin.best_ask equals data.best_ask. And coin best bid. And you can see what I'm referencing. Best ask here, best bid, data.best bid. Let's do coin.low 24-hour equals data.low 24-hour. Let's do the same thing for high. Coin.high 24-hour equals data.high 24-hour. Okay, so now what we can do is do a coin.average 24-hour and set this equal to number data.high 24-hour plus number data.low 24-hour, and then divided by 2. So this is going to add the high with the low and then divide by 2, which is how you get an average. And then what we also want to do here before we move on is add a 2 fixed and then put a 4 here. Otherwise, it could go on for a bunch of different decimal points, and that's not what we really want. So now the last one we want to do is get the percent change So coin.%change average 24-hour. And you can name this whatever you want. You don't have to name it the same that I do. I'm going to do data.best_ask divided by coin.average 24-hour minus 1 times 100, and then 2 fixed again. And this one I want to be 2 decimal places. So I'm going to put a 2 fixed 2. Okay, so let's do a console.clear so that once we start running this and returning it to the console, it will clear every time it runs through this, every time it gets a new message. And so it'll keep it up to date. And here's where we can actually use the chalk npm module that we imported. So let's do console log chalk.white._underline. Okay, that's what I'm going to name mine. And there we have it. Current Coinbase prices. And it's going to keep refreshing every time it gets a message and it changes the data. And if you wanted a little bit more information about the chalk npm module, it's here. It's got 80 million downloads per week. So it is a very popular module in here. And this is what you can make the text look like in this box. Essentially, you just pass in inside a console log chalk.the color that you want and then what you want the text to output. It gets a little bit more complicated later on as we use template literals, and we will get into that in just a bit. I'm just going to add a blank line in here and then do another crypto for each coin. And then I want to know if the coin is enabled. And since we set that to either true or false, if it is true, this will evaluate as true, which will then satisfy this if statement. If it's false, then this will evaluate as false and it won't execute the code that's in this if statement. So we don't have to say if coin.enabled equals true. And this is a way that we can make our code a little bit more simplified and concise. All right, so if coin%change average 24-hour is greater than 0, we want to console log chalk.green, and then we want it to say what the coin name is that we're tracking. To do that, we need to pass in backticks, a $, and then the curly braces, coin.name. And if we actually run this, okay, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, this is how it's going to show. And then we want all the details to be shown underneath that. So let's Control-C or Command-C if you're on a Mac, and let's actually pass in the other details that we need. Console log. And then here's where it gets a little bit different. It's a different syntax for chalk that we can use. We're just going to do chalk and then immediately use the backticks instead of passing in the color. And then we can do curly braces, the color that we want, and then a space. And now we can type everything else that we want. So I'm going to do square brackets and then pass in coin.ticker. And if we go back to this crypto.json, the ticker is just BTC or ETH. So that's what it's going to pass in inside the square brackets. I'm going to type in current $ curly brackets, and then we'll do coin.best_ask. Okay, we'll do another 2 spaces, average 24-hour, coin.average 24-hour, %change 24-hour, and then pass in coin.%change average 24-hour. And I can add % at the end of that and then hit save. And now if we run this again, it should have all this information down here, and it's green. So before we ran this, we checked and made sure that the average is above 0. So as long as there's an increase, it'll be green. But if there was a decrease, it just wouldn't show anything at this point. So now we need to do an else statement so that if it is below 0, and we basically want it to write the exact same thing, we just want it to be red. So let's copy these 2 lines, paste them there, and then we'll go back through here, rename this to red, and rename this to red. Let's stop it and rerun. Maybe this will go under. Okay, so I don't think it's going to. It's really, really close there, but I'm going to go into this crypto.json, and I'm going to switch a couple of these to true. So let's stop this and then rerun it. Okay, this time, now this one's below 0 and this one's below 0, and they're both red. So this will quickly allow you to see when prices go under and when they're in the positive. So thank you for joining me. I hope you found this useful. If you did, I'd love to see what you do with this project. So please share it with me. If you want me to take a look at your project and give suggestions for different things that you can do, definitely leave a link to it in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for future videos to make, definitely leave that in the comments below as well. And I would love to make a video that you're interested in. Otherwise, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.